Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we're checking out the Asus G751 ROG gaming laptop or notebook, depending on how you want to put it. So this thing is an absolute beast. It's pretty huge, so that's, I guess, where we're going to start straight off with the exterior. So this thing is very large, very heavy as well. It's coming in at 5.3 kilograms, which is pretty damn heavy. You're not going to be wanting to lug this around all day. That's certainly for sure. Oh, I'll try to hold it up here for you. So yeah, very large, very heavy. It's super fat towards the rear as well, where these vents are. You see it kind of tapers off towards the front, so it's not too bad. But yeah, I honestly think though, as far as looks go, with this brushed aluminium over the top, oh, if we can lug it up, it looks really good. It's a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but that's not really that bad. That ROG logo does also light up. So yeah, I think it looks really good. It looks really serious, really cool. It's just a bit chunky, but when we get into the specs and you see what this is packing, then you'll understand why. But yeah, if you're a uni student or something like that, man, lugging this thing around all day, ooh, man, unless you're built like an absolute tank, it'll really wear on you. So looking now at I/O on the left hand side, since there's nothing on the front, we see a multi-card reader, a Blu-ray drive, which is cool for people that want to be consuming lots of media on it, dual USB 3.0 ports, a secure lock. There is nothing on the back, and if we look around here to the right hand side, we see the AC input, VGA output, gigabit Ethernet, HDMI output, Thunderbolt, which is pretty cool to have, twin USB and audio mic jacks and all that fun stuff over there. So let's get now to the specs while we boot this guy up. So as far as processors go, it's got the i7-4860HQ. So that's a quad core with hyperthreading, 2.4 GHz base clock, and a 3.4 GHz boost clock. Now, as far as memory goes, it's pretty damn overkill. 32 gigabytes of DDR3 memory at 1600 megahertz, so absolutely overkill. Networking wise, it's featuring 802.11 wireless AC, which is really cool, and Bluetooth 4.0. And the operating system is Windows 8.1. But what about the graphics? Well, it has the GeForce GTX 980M in it. So as I previously said, the 970M is more powerful than the previous generation GTX 880M. So this 980M is an absolute beast. There are no two ways about it. Boots up very fast due to it having two SSDs. That's two 120 gigabyte SSDs, I should say, and a single 2 terabyte HDD for your mass storage. Now let's talk about the first thing that you're going to see, which is the screen. So this is a 17.3 inch 1080p IPS panel. Now I thought this screen was absolutely fantastic. It's very clear, the colors are really sharp. I just thought it was really great, and because it's an IPS panel, it has fantastic viewing angles. There's no color shift going on here, so a lot of people could be watching, say, a movie or a video on it with no worries at all. I just thought it was a great display for gaming as well. It was fantastic, absolutely phenomenal, A+ as far as the display goes. Now sound, so this wasn't as good as the screen. It does go decently loud. And the speakers, if you're wondering, are behind the screen here, on the side, sort of where my thumb is, down this back area here. So, the speakers were okay. They go decently loud, but it doesn't have much bass at all, which I know you're saying, well, it's just a laptop. But honestly, it's just not that ideal all round. It's not that good. At higher audio levels as well, you get a lot of creaking and like vibrating, like the chassis vibrating. If you've heard that before on a laptop, you probably know what I mean. And it just sounds a bit tinny at times. Honestly, it'll do a decent job. Like it's average, put it that way. But if you really want good sound quality, then I would suggest investing in either some external speakers for it or a good pair of headphones. Moving on now to the keyboard, and it's a bit of a mixed bag with the keyboard. So it's got a pretty good layout for the most part. I thought it was pretty good. All the function keys are grouped together at the top where the F keys are, which It's kind of, some people will like that. There's also the macro keys up the top as well. Personally, I kind of like them a bit more spread out with, say, the volume and brightness keys down on the arrow keys here. But you know, that's not the end of the world. The key travel and the keys themselves were fantastic for a laptop. There's a lot of travel there. They were really good. You don't miss keys as often, and yeah, it just felt really good. However, there are drawbacks. There's dedicated keys where I really don't see the need for it. There's this ROG key up here, which just launches the Asus Gaming Center, which we'll talk about a bit later, but it makes me wonder why on earth they included something like this as a, you know, it doesn't need a dedicated key, just put it that way. There's also a dedicated Steam button, which is kind of bizarre, and it launches it in big picture mode, which is even more bizarre, because, I mean, I never use big picture mode. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I just never use it. So that's a bit strange, and there's a shadow play button. Just overall, these dedicated buttons, there just doesn't seem to be that much of a need for them. Honestly, I'd rather, if you're going to have dedicated buttons, then make them programmable so the user can set them to what they want. That's what I'd say. But yeah, another great thing though is the backlighting. So it doesn't go that bright, which is obvious because they don't want it to drain too much battery life. But it's still pretty good. I thought it looked great. It highlights the keys really well, although it doesn't shine through, so at night if you have the backlight off, for example, it might be hard to see what some of the keys are. Now moving on to the touchpad. And as you guys know, I have issues with a lot of the laptops we've been testing recently with their touchpads, but this one was fantastic. Such a breath of fresh air to have a really good one. The sensitivity and size is perfect. There's just no other way to put it. It just felt great. The travel on the right and left sort of clicks pretty good as well. And the gestures worked really, really well with the Asus Smart Gestures. It was easy to use, easy to set up, and I just thought it was great. Honestly, it was just really, really well done. I don't see why it's so difficult for other manufacturers to get something like the trackpad, well, the touchpad to be right. But Asus did a really good job here. Now the webcam is pretty good, just standard. It'll do your Skype calls and everything else really well. Now to the performance. This is the big one. How did it actually do? So performance is fantastic. My God, is this thing heavy though? Yeah, so performance was fantastic. It just goes so hard with the SSDs. The boot times are really quick. Everything's very snappy, very fast. And I did some benchmarks for you guys so you can see how hard it actually went. So, to start the CPU, I used Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. I did the benchmark within that software. And it scored 861 marks, which is a really solid score for a laptop, like really solid. So that was really good. Now I also did a Unigine Valley on the Extreme HD preset, and it scored an average of 34.2 frames per second, which is another really good score. Then I did Unigine Heaven 4.0, that's everything maxed out, 1080p DirectX 11, and it scored 33.5 frames per second average. And then I did Unigine Heaven again, everything maxed out again, this time in OpenGL, and it scored 30.6. So really solid scores there in terms of performance, and overall it just flew through games. It could play most games at 1080p with the graphics turned up pretty high. So yeah, it's going to do all your 1080p gaming needs pretty well. And some really high demand games you might need to bump down some of the filters and stuff like that if you want to keep the frame rate nice and high. But overall I was really impressed, and this is definitely the best performing laptop that I've ever tested. That leads us in now, if we move that around, to the heat and noise with its big vents out the back there into the base. So as far as, I'll close you up for now. There we go. So as far as heat and noise goes, heat wise it did very, very well. Whoops. So in my Intel Extreme Tuning Utility benchmarks, that was stressing out the CPU nice and good. The CPU only rose to 72 degrees Celsius, which is a really good effort, honestly. There was very low heat as far as a laptop goes. And then as far as the GPU went, I took the highest temperature while it was doing the Unigine Heaven 4.0 DirectX 11 benchmark, and it only went to 59 degrees Celsius. So absolutely fantastic as far as temperatures go, especially for a laptop, which we've been running into really hot running ones. They're really slim, and light ones tend to run incredibly hot. Well, this one's quite fat, but yeah, the cooling is absolutely fantastic. Now, as far as noise go, if you think it was really noisy, like the fans ramped up heaps to get those lowest temperatures, then you're absolutely wrong, because it was completely quiet. I got the fans to ramp up a little bit during the Heaven benchmark, but I mean, it was barely anything. It wasn't loud at all. So it's going to be completely fine. You're not going to have to use headphones with it or anything like that. Noise-wise, it was perfect. Very silent. Very good. A+. So now getting into battery life, and with all that performance, you do sacrifice a lot of battery life. So with average use, so this is just like web browsing, kind of just your daily carry-on like you would non-gaming, you're going to get probably about 3 to 3.5 hours of use out of it. If you are gaming, it's going to drop down quite a bit. Honestly, it'll probably drop down to say like 2 hours or something like that. It's not ideal, but with the performance you're getting from this laptop, it's kind of to be expected. Now, it does feature Battery Boost 2.0, which works really well. It's fully automatic, and it basically just makes better use of your battery to the components to extend battery life while you're gaming. And there's also 2 options in GeForce Experience for optimizing your game settings. So there's one for on the battery, and there's one for when it's plugged in. Which is cool, so it sets it just a bit easier when it's on the battery. So that's a really cool addition as well. Now, software, there's a lot of Asus software, but overall there's not that much bloatware. As we said earlier, there is their Asus Gaming Center, which you don't need a dedicated button for, because you probably only need to go in it once and then set everything up the way you like it and then leave it. I don't know why there's a dedicated button for it, but the other Asus software is really good, like the smart gestures and everything else.